During middle adulthood, there are a lot of social and emotional and personality changes that are affected by the growing age of children and also the deteriorating health that could be seen and that's often seen by the parents of the individuals. In order for us to be able to provide the assistance to the generations that came before us and those that came after, we need to have successfully completed the generativity versus stagnation. According to Erickson, we can only give back to those that came after us if we've found a sense of intimacy and we have a stable identity as to who we are. So, in order for us to be able to give back to those and be able to provide, we need to have the sense of belonging, the sense of being part of society. And this is related to mental health among middle aged adults, as it is often associated with satisfaction in all assets and facets of our lives. The midlife crisis is one of those things that is likely to occur at this point, but what we mean by midlife crisis has often been debated as to whether it really exists or if it's something that is just a fiction and maybe used as an excuse. But this is believed to be brought about by a constellation of difficult tasks that are often presented in midlife. This is the point in which we have to begin to accept our own mortality. Prior to this stage, we often find that young people and adolescents feel that death is part of life, but that is so far from us. And now, when we get to midlife, we realize that we're actually close as we've ever been to it, and we begin to realize that maybe we have not completed a lot of the tasks we wanted to, and there's a sense of wanting to complete things which can lead to a crisis. Recognizing our own physical limitations is a quick reminder of that, and also the adaptation to major changes in our roles will also lead to us spreading ourselves too thin, which could bring about a sense of anxiety and stress. The crises are typically triggered by specific events. So, if there were to be the loss of a job, the death of a close friend or relative, difficulties in marriage or with children, and this can often make individuals feel overwhelmed. And sometimes, in an attempt to ease up the burden, and there may be an attempt to escape reality. And sometimes that's done through what we see the trading in of the minivan for a convertible, or sometimes infidelities or various other things. We find that people with history of depression are likely to face these midlife tasks more negatively than those who do not. Marital stability and satisfaction, for the most part, should increase in midlife, but we find that this is not just because of the age, but often because by this point, the married couple would probably have an increase in number of shared friends, and that would allow for a greater satisfaction, a good and healthy social circle that would be adequate. Successful problem solving strategies would also contribute to a sense that they have some form of control over their relationship because they know that even though they may fight, it's not the end of the world as they may have thought previously. They realize that it's just part of living and they know how to solve it because they've done it before. We often find that middle aged women are better able to cope with divorce than younger women. And we find that this, again, can be due to the experience that is brought about or facilitated through life, through their dealings with their husbands, or maybe through others' dealings. The emptiness syndrome is a time during which people can, parents in midlife typically, can experience a sense of depression, anxiety, and possibly even a heightened chance of divorce. And this is when children often leave the home, either because of college, get married, or just simply moving out. Now, if parenting and the family life was done well during the previous stages, then they did not neglect their roles as wives or husbands. But if they devoted entirely or mostly to being a mother, and now the child is gone, it could present a sense of confusion that often brings about, again, this anxiety and depression. Now, the majority of women are happy when they reach this milestone, again, because they feel that they could reconnect with their spouses in different ways. However, it's not always the case. In 1970, 8% of 25-year-olds in the United States live with their parents, whereas in 2010, we had twice more than double that of the same age who live with their parents. And despite the economy possibly getting better, we find that there are different levels of responsibility that are seen by emerging adulthood. There is also something that is called the midlife squeeze, and this is where individuals who are in middle adulthood are in between their deteriorating health of the elderly parents and also the pressure of their children who may be demanding attention or also just time. So, this multi generational caregivers are adults who provide assistance to their elderly parents and to their adult children at the same time. We find that, again, children sometimes live at home uh, with parents despite maybe already having a job and a career. And this may present some type of burden on the individual. Now, the poor health habits are often due to the challenges that are presented, the financial burdens, the emotional responsibilities seen in there, sometimes because of the multiple responsibilities outside of the house. It may be difficult for the person to get home and enjoy a good time with the spouse, and not to mention the physical toll that it would take as well. Grandparenting is often started in middle adulthood. About one third of adults become grandparents by their late 40s. And we find that about 92% express high levels of satisfaction with this role. But we find that not all grandparents are the stereotype or stereotypical image we have of grandparents of being warm and caring. Sometimes we find that people who become grandparents at this age are often kind of cold and distant. And this is believed to be due to the fact that they may still be working and not have time to be baking cookies for them. But others have also suggested that with the fear of aging, grandparents may be reluctant to accept this in this role in life. During midlife, our career issues are likely to be slightly different. We find that burnout, which is a lack of energy, form of exhaustion, is typically seen in younger adults, but we find that the experience that has come from earlier stages or now allows us to pace ourselves better. We find that we may not be as preoccupied with promotions and with life expectations. Nonetheless, we do find some gender differences whenever burnout does occur. When men are not treated fairly, sometimes in the workplace, they have a tendency to talk, to negotiate, to address the issue, whereas women in midlife are more likely to withdraw and sometimes complain collectively with other coworkers, but not necessarily generating a change. This is important for us to understand as it can impact productivity at the workplace, but also as spouses or as sons and daughters of employees that are in midlife. We need to understand that the way they're addressing and handling their career would be probably very different than the way we are. I've had conversations with a cousin who wishes his mom was a lot more aggressive in terms of what to request at work. Now, she is a younger person and she's very outspoken about things and she's very driven, whereas her mom is different And we may contribute this to a cultural point, or we could also address the age differences, and only time will tell whether cousin will also take a more passive approach later in life. The unemployment this point, and at any point really, is difficult, but it seems to be more difficult during middle age. And the reason why is because sometimes there is a sense of competition that is seen with younger employees now. Now we have to compete with people that may have newly acquired skills, computer skills, and we may also have to overcome ageism, which is a form of discrimination based on age. A heightened sense of anxiety and depression sets on us. And we also find that there's a higher risk of physical illness after job loss that is seen in middle adults. That's not necessarily seen in younger people. The type of impact that it will have on family relationships, we find that typically men experience depression and loss of self-esteem, and as a result of that, the marital relationship can deteriorate. Uh, what is interesting is that as soon as a person is reemployed, all these different issues, health concerns, emotional lack of emotional stability, they tend to get back on track. So definitely arguing as to how we've become accustomed to a lifestyle, and perhaps not only financial but also a routine. With our careers come a sense of responsibility, but not always do we live thinking about the future. It is important that we prepare for retirement, and according to some statistics and research that was conducted in 2009, we have wealth builders, we have anxious idealists, empowered trailblazers, stretched and stress boomers, and leisure lifers. And you can see the different percentages of people that are here. Now, the wealth builders are those who plan to spend time building upon their already accumulated wealth after retirement. So they will continue to invest, they'll continue making more money, and to a certain extent, they're not necessarily going to retire. They just want to continue making money thereafter. They may stop their current occupation, but they will continue working in different ways. The anxious idealists are those who plan to volunteer, work, donate money to charity, but they're often unable to because of their limited income. The empowered trailblazers are those who plan on traveling, taking classes, continuing to work, but in volunteering, and they're not necessarily interested in making more money. The stretched and stress boomers are those who are in deep financial trouble and that are worried about the future because they didn't plan accordingly. And those that are leisure lifers are those who, as stated here, plan to spend most of their time engaging in recreational pursuits and are geared toward retirement in their early to mid 50s. These are individuals who rarely ever kind of make it happen. We often find that we may all start that way, but the majority of us, as we get into retirement, rarely ever does it happen in the 50s. And some people report that after retiring at that age, there are a series of, of challenges that are presented, not only because of tax reasons, as we find that retirement packages are designed to often last for a period of time, but also because of the relationship that will be occurring between the couple or amongst the couple.